Welcome to the Circle Sessions featuring the Circle of Experts. The Circle of Experts are Yasmin Robles from Robles Designs, Tanisha English Amamu of TJE Communications, and Don the Idea Guy. I'm Brett Johnson from Circle 270 Media Podcast Consultants. Each week, one of the Circle of Experts joins me to talk about some critical aspects of growing your podcast. We'll focus on marketing, social media, monetization, and website design with the idea of implementing all of these together. This week, Don is here with the Circle of Experts. He possesses creative powers beyond those of mere mortals. Don the Idea Guy rescues those in need of innovative ideas through his brainstorming sessions at $5 Brainstorms. Don, thanks for joining me today.
Oh, it's a pleasure to be back. How are you, sir?
Doing really good. And I like the lineup of stories we're going to be talking about in this episode because it's wide ranging. I love it when we can talk on different subjects. Sometimes it's nice to pull a thread through a lot of them, but sometimes it's nice just like, hey, this one's over here, and this one's over here.
Well, it's towards the end of the year, so I was a little kinder with my selections. I usually try and pick one that we're going to be on opposite sides of just to stir things up. And I think going through these so far, we've been right in alignment as we pre-gamed a little bit.
A little bit. Yeah, I agree. And your first one that we want to talk about is this some research that was done recently, some data showing that weekly podcast listeners what they like and what they don't like in regards to the right number of ads in the podcast. And you know what? It's amazing that we're actually the listeners are in acceptance of this. There's a time when nobody wanted ads in podcasts.
Right. The right number of ads is none.
Exactly. And now we're talking upwards of 4.
So what's your theory on that? Because I definitely have a theory on why.
Oh my gosh. I'm not a lover of this. Now,
No, what is your theory on why listener perception has changed?
because it's just been there a long time and we're podcast listeners are accepting of it. I think podcast listeners are becoming smarter and understanding that if they want their favorite podcast to remain in existence, the podcast host has explained enough that's like, to keep this going, I have to accept ads. There is a cost measure in doing podcasting. And this is the one way that I have found that's going to be efficient for me to make money and to keep this podcast going. I think they've heard that enough over the past couple of years that it's starting to make sense to them. I think that might be it.
I'll give you a maybe a little bit on that. I think in general, nobody wants to listen to ads.
No.
And what happened is they had all these podcasts out there with no ads in them and they loved it. And then it went from no ads to maybe a recommendation by the host, which doesn't feel like an ad, which is a smart way to do it.
Yeah.
And then it was just egregiously abused. And there were 10 ads in a 10-minute show. And people went, oh my God, this is horrible. And then they get sent a survey on how many ads is acceptable. Like, well, as long as it's not 10, like I'll take 2. I'll take 2 ads. I'll take 3 ads.
Yeah.
But they're getting bad. And the more, it's a reality that marketers ruin everything. So as soon as you get marketing people and advertising people involved in any sort of media, let's shove some more ads in there. And as you see a rise in these popular solo and individual podcasts that are being picked up by networks, a great example, HubSpot network. HubSpot's a great brand. Their HubSpot network shoves ads. Like you got a pre-roll and then you got 3 ads back to back in the middle of it. And then you got a post roll that, nobody's going to listen to unless you can't get to the skip button in time while you're listening in the car. But it's bad. It's painful. One of my favorite podcasts is Join the HubSpot podcast network. And I hate the ads now. It used to be they would do one ad promoting somebody who literally supported the show 1-to-1.
Yeah.
And I would listen to it, or at least I wouldn't skip it. I'd just let it play. I'd drown it out. You add blindness like everybody. But now I skip it. And there's a setting in my podcast player, Pocket Cast, I think, that I can tell, Pocket Cast player, where I can tell it to start a show a certain number of seconds in. And they have a 30-second ad at the beginning. This is a different show. I think it's Daily Brew or something. They've got a 30-second ad right at the beginning of every episode. And I just tell it to start 30 seconds in and I miss it entirely. And so the listeners are going to find a way around it.
And I think to your point of saying, "Hey, I'm okay with 10 minutes." As long as it doesn't do 10 minutes, because they know they can hit their skip button. They can make the skip button skip 30 seconds at a time. You can, and
Right.
most players, you can control it. So you know if it's a 5 or a 3 minutes commercial set, you hit the thing 5 times and you're
Yep.
almost through it. I think that's why a piece of it is more accepting of it as well. So, but you know what? There's a yin and a yang to all this. So
Sure.
therefore, I think that's why ads have become better. I'm hearing better ads, especially on the higher end quality shows. Like let's put it like Smartless. Smartless has a lot of ads in it,
They have a
but
lot of ads.
but they're not bad. They're done very well. They're smart. They're
Yeah, but
educational to a certain degree,
how
but
many good ads can you stand to listen to in a row? Because they're another show that runs all their ads in a row.
right.
Why are
And
you running all your ads in a row?
by the same co-host as well. I,
Sometimes they'll switch.
yeah,
It's a great show. I listen to that
right,
show all the time
right.
too. And sometimes they will shake up the host. You've got 3 hosts,
Mhm.
you've got 3 ads. They should definitely have
Yes.
a rotation of the host, not all 3 done by one of the guys.
Right.
That
And I
makes it
don't,
painful. And
and
when
we
you're
don't know.
skipping, how do you know which ad you're on?
Right, and you don't know where the money flow is, like who is actually being paid to do the spot and
Yeah.
who wants to do the spot, or the advertiser saying, "I want this one of the co-hosts to do my ad." Well, then you may have 3 ads together
Yeah,
if
but
that's the
still,
case.
why not? Oh
I
man.
know, I
And
know.
that's a good example of a podcast to use too, because it's a longer podcast.
Mhm.
All their episodes are at least an hour.
Yeah.
So you could easily put one ad in there after their intro, because their intro is always fun. They
Mhm.
do their back and forth, their banter. Do the ad right before you introduce the guest. You gave the clues. I think I knew who it is. All right, we're going to reveal it right after this.
And
Play one
bingo.
ad.
Yeah.
Play one ad.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
then you've got the normal break where they have in the middle of the show, do one more ad,
Mhm.
or even if you felt the need, play 2 of the ads there, but stop playing 3 there.
Yeah.
It's painful,
Yeah,
and I
it
am gonna
is.
skip them every time, even though I love those guys and think they're brilliant. I How many times are you gonna subject me to an ad?
Right.
So
Yeah.
I think the whole beginning, and I won't even call it a pre-roll. Don't do a pre-roll because I'll use my app to skip
Mhm.
you, but do a cool intro. You know, the great example I give for this, James Bond movies. When you watch a James Bond movie, there's an opening sequence that is a little movie within a movie. It's a cool intro. James is on an adventure, and
Yeah.
then he makes his getaway and ends up on a parachuting off of a mountain and lands on the back of a yacht with a beautiful Bond girl. And then they go into the theme. Then it's the theme song.
Yeah.
Do that with your show. Start out with a great hook. Get into the show. Do a little feature. Then give me an ad.
Mhm. Yeah.
Then
Yeah,
give me
it's
some show. Then give me another ad. Then
yeah.
be done.
Well, and Smartless kind of does that if you think about it. The banter is its own life.
It is.
It
That's
truly
why
is.
I'm using it as the example,
Yeah,
because then
truly
they
is.
have their banter. What'd
Mhm.
you do last week? They make fun of everybody. Then they
Exactly.
start giving the clues to who their guest is gonna be,
Mhm.
and right before they do the reveal, they should run an ad.
Yeah,
We'll be right back.
exactly. Even though everybody knows who it is because it's in the
Yeah,
title of the
but it's still
episode,
funny. It's still
but it's
funny
still funny. They do a really good job of it because you're playing right along with it. But I think
because the
they
other 2 guys don't know who it is.
they don't exactly. At least the
They don't
assumption.
know.
I don't
They
think
don't
they
know.
do. They if
Nope.
they do, they certainly play it well.
Because they
But I don't
love
think they
getting
do.
each other on that, because they'll throw out some false clues to try and get the
Yeah.
person to bite onto another
Yeah,
name.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So, but I think, yeah, well, I think the research went even deeper in regards to what ads are acceptable. Well, so the question was, please indicate how interested you would be in hearing a certain type of ad, and the one that shows up really well in that you do hear often is ads that communicate features, benefits, of products or services. Well, again, that fits the medium. So
Right.
that basically you would be interested in it if it's about middle of the 5 questions asked, and what they do here, it's happening. So that's a good thing. As well as podcasts that are funny and are entertaining. If you keep those 3 mixtures together, funny, interesting, and features and benefits, you may have a good ad, and maybe it doesn't have to be 60 seconds long. I know there are no rules and regulations and that sort of thing, but does an ad have to be 60? Because in a podcast,
Yeah.
60 feels like 90.
Well, the marketers
Oh,
haven't gotten onto this yet, but the perfect length of a podcast ad is 40 seconds.
I think it is too. I think you're right.
40 or 45
Yeah.
seconds, because when I hear the ad, I skip. It's going to skip ahead 30 seconds
Mhm.
by default. And then you've got me hooked for 5 to 10 more seconds,
Mm.
where give me the hook. Give me the
Yeah.
hook and give me the call to action in that 5 to 10 seconds, because I'm not going to skip again, because then I got to back up and find where it left
Mhm.
off. So the perfect length of a podcast ad is 40 to 45 seconds,
Yeah.
right in 44 to 45 seconds, because that's just the way it is. And
Yeah.
you use the opposite advertising copy strategy that you use for YouTube pre-roll ads. Because in a YouTube pre-roll ad, you want to get your message and your call to action across in the first
Mhm.
3 to 5 seconds
Right.
before the skip button comes on.
Yeah.
So if you can get me a great call to action, and who's the save you can save insurance in 15 minutes? Geico.
Oh, Geico.
Geico
Yeah.
does the best YouTube ads,
Mhm.
because they're so good you might even watch the whole ad, but you get everything you need. You get the joke, you get the payoff, you get the call to action in the first 5 seconds.
Right.
In a podcast ad, you want to reverse that. You want to have that information in the last 5 seconds, because everybody's going to skip. And if they don't, then great. You have a good ad, and then end with a great call to action. But
Mhm.
in my opinion, that's the podcast advertising strategy more people should be using.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I agree. I agree. So, again, it comes down to preference. You got to stay in contact with your audience and kind of look at the analytics. Are people dropping off? Are you getting feedback about too much? The ads are bad if they're too long. Yeah, there are a lot of nuances to it. I personally think there's much easier ways to make money on a podcast. We've talked about numerous ideas on how to make money,
Right.
and you
Well,
don't
they're
have to do
talking about
ads.
the size. I mean, if you've got the
Yeah.
size where you can get those
Yeah.
big national ads, and you're going to take advantage of the
Yeah.
listener, the download, and the impressions you get, good for you that you built
Yeah.
an audience that big. Um, you mentioned the type of ads that are popular, and the services
Hmm.
and that kind of thing. I still think those are the ads that are at scale, because all the big ones, all the accounting software and the SaaS products,
Hmm.
and those are the same ads on every podcast. It doesn't matter which podcast you're listening to.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
if I'm listening to a writer's podcast, coming off of NaNoWriMo, the National Novel Writing Month, I was
Mhm.
listening to a writer's podcast. And it's not a huge podcast. It's a good podcast. I think it is a popular podcast. I don't think they're getting the numbers that you would need for a big national advertiser. So they're doing ads that I think should be would be even more popular if podcasts were to do this. And this is the in context ads. So when I'm listening to their podcast, I will hear an ad about a writing tool, writing software, or I'll hear an ad about a book that's from an independent author. So if I'm listening to that podcast, I'm an independent author myself, or I'm interested in writing. That kind of stuff is in context with my interests, rather than just saying, "Oh, a services ad would be of interest." Hell no.
Mhm.
When I'm listening to, if I when I'm listening to, um, oh god, we were just talking about it with the three hosts.
Oh, Smartless.
If I'm listening to Smartless, I want to hear ads for the different projects those three idiots are involved in. Like, I want to
Yeah.
hear a movie preview for the next movie that they're in, or I
Mhm.
want to hear the TV show that they're going to be in, or I want to hear stuff in context. The next
Mm.
comedy club tour they're going to be at.
Mhm.
That kind of stuff. It fits in context, and it's still an ad.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And I am judging some podcasts for, I can't name the entity because I'm in a cease and desist right now because of the judging is going on. But it offers the opportunity for me to listen to podcasts I would never listen to. And I chose, or I was given the business category. And there's one podcast, I can't think of the name, but it's legal marketing for lawyers. So all they talk about is very
Gotcha.
niche
Mhm.
marketing advice and such. And I'm hearing ads that are very specific to lawyers
That's
to
awesome.
market. But you know what? They don't fit the entertaining. They don't fit the funny. They fit the benefits
Contextual.
criteria stuff.
It's very, yeah,
Exactly.
yeah.
It's perfect for that. And I bet they're making good money on it because
The,
how many legal marketing podcasts are there? Maybe a
I
handful.
mean,
I don't know.
the response rate has to be great.
Oh my gosh, yeah. Yeah, exactly. As well as, whether it's their downloads are big or not, they know exactly who their audience is.
Well, it's, as a friend of ours has said before, you don't need 5 million impressions if you
No.
can get five of the right ones.
Right.
Because a lot of people are buying 5 million impressions because they're going to get five conversions.
Mhm.
But if you have the right ad to a small audience and it's the right ad, you might get 5 conversions with 5 listeners.
Right.
I mean,
Right.
if you're a lawyer listening to that lawyer how to market as a lawyer podcast
Mhm.
and you hear an ad for a social media tool that's so easy a lawyer can use it, well, it's going to get your attention. It might make you chuckle. You might check it out.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. Moving on to Spotify Premium. Uh, their subscribers in the US can now enjoy 15 hours of free audiobook content each month with best-selling titles making up 70% of the catalog. That's really interesting. So you're a big audiobook listener. What do you think about this?
I think this is great.
Okay.
Great news, great evolution of what they were trying to do. As some folks might know, Spotify rolled out audiobooks for sale on their platform and kind of ran into trouble with the mobile payment systems through Apple and Android because they take such a big cut of the payment when you make a payment
Yeah.
on the apps that they had this workaround where you had to go to Spotify on your desktop or mobile browser, buy the piece in there, buy the book you wanted in there, and then you had to go back to the app and listen inside the app because they did not want to share that revenue. And I get why they didn't want to. It's a huge amount of money that they're taking. I
Yeah.
think it's they're actually being sued. I think they lost a lawsuit in England or Europe someplace
Yeah, I think so
about
too.
that very issue um, for a web app game developer.
Mhm.
But for Spotify to realize they had those pains and they knew it was bad, and the agreements in the on the mobile platforms were such that they couldn't even say we're doing this because of this problem. They weren't allowed. They weren't even allowed to say like click here to go to our portal to buy it. It was so bad. So when they're having those pains and people are like, wow, I'm not sure I would. There was certainly no price benefit. The titles are very expensive. They're your full retail. Um, and this came out of left field where they went, all right, well, if you're a paid premium user already, no matter uh, which uh, which level you're paying at,
Mhm.
you get free audiobooks. And 15 hours is a long time in an audiobook. That's like 3 books.
That's true.
Most are 5 hours.
Yeah. Mhm.
So, and what a great opportunity to sample a couple of books. And it's not every book in their catalog is available. Only certain ones are available for streaming. And they've done a really good job of breaking down the audiobook into nice bite-sized chapters where it may only be 5, 10, or 15 minutes. So it makes it easy to listen to almost like a track on an album you might be listening to on
Hmm.
Spotify. Relatively easy to jump in and out. A little bit harder if you stop listening in the middle of a chapter,
Hmm.
but it's strong. I've been listening to it for a few weeks now. I do enjoy it. I still mostly use Spotify for music. It never caught on with me as a podcast platform, but audiobooks, I could see this working, especially if you give it to me as a benefit as a paying user. I've been a long time Audible member. I was a member of Audible before Amazon bought it. The integration here between Spotify music and Spotify audio is stronger than Amazon's.
Hmm.
Amazon books and music is still separate from Amazon Audible books because every time I want to click to buy an Audible book, it opens up Audible's platform, even
Mhm.
though I use my Amazon login. Um, but I've built up such a library, I've got such a bookshelf there of Audible books. I don't think Spotify is going to convince me to be 100% convert, but making it available for 15 hours a month certainly got me to test it out.
Right. It certainly has the opportunity to bring new earballs, let's put it, to Spotify, which can benefit podcasters. But at the same time, if they're listening to an audio, we only have X amount of hours to do what we want to do for entertainment per day. So you could argue, I guess, that hey, if you're a book listener, you're audiobook listener, you're an audiobook listener, whatever platform you are. But if they're on Spotify already listening to a podcast, which is audio storytelling, it can be. At least Spotify is somewhat training the listener now to think of them more than just music. I, I don't know. It'll be interesting to see where this goes because I still see the research showing that if you listen to podcasts on Spotify, you're really only listening to one or two.
Oh, really?
Because Spotify in your mind is a music platform.
I hadn't heard that
So,
spec. That's
yeah.
definitely interesting. I had not heard
So
that data. Yeah.
so the podcasters I work with, when they have them on Spotify, it's really great analytics. I'm telling you, it's strong stuff that you can really, really see inside who's listening to you. But it's still, second compared to Apple by a margin, by a
Yep.
large margin. So I don't know whether that creeps up things or not. Obviously we can't rely on one platform or a multitude of platforms. You got to be everywhere if you're a podcaster. Same thing if you're an audiobook. You got to be as in many places as possible. Audiobook creators and authors are probably loving this. It's another
Oh,
touch point.
well, it's going to depend on the data Spotify ends up sharing about
Yeah.
conversion. So if I'm a if I'm an author and I have an audiobook and I learn that Spotify's playing it for free, how do I get paid for that?
Mhm.
First of all, how do I get paid? Um, Amazon has figured it out on the Kindle because they have the Kindle Unlimited, and the authors get paid based on how far a reader progresses into the book. So is Audible's audiobook royalties similar to that? How much of the book they listen to is how much an author gets? I wonder how that works. And then
Yeah.
if I find out as an author that doing the sample there equates to a purchase, like, oh yeah, I find that one out of every 50 freemium listeners end up actually buying the book. Okay, well, now I'll promote it. Yeah, absolutely. Listen to
Mhm.
it for free on Spotify. And
Yeah.
now I'm sending people to Spotify to listen to it.
Yeah. Well, I would argue that Spotify has already opened the door that podcasters put their content up there for free and get no money back.
Yeah,
And
but an
often
author's not going to do that.
they
Not most authors. Most
right,
authors are going to do that.
but they are already, correct?
On Spotify,
On Spotify, you're not paying for that book, correct? When you listen
well,
to it.
I'm a premium user, so I'm paying for access to the platform. I'm
Right.
curious if I listen to a song on Spotify, the artist gets paid, the
Right.
musician, the band. So if I'm listening to an audiobook, my expectation is the author's getting something. If I read a free
Yeah.
book on Kindle a free book on
Yeah.
Kindle
Yeah.
Unlimited, I'm a subscriber to Kindle Unlimited.
Right.
So part of my payment, and I know from other authors who have books on Unlimited, they get paid on a sliding scale of how many pages get read in the book.
Mhm.
So my theory is Spotify has to be working under the same operation, or we'd be hearing a lot more headlines about authors complaining that they're not getting paid for their free books that are available on Spotify.
And that's true. I've not heard that. That's what comes to mind. Are they? Because of well, I don't know. Yeah, exactly. And maybe it just hasn't come to a head yet. They've started this when? Back in November, was it that they started
It's been
the
a couple of months.
couple
Yeah.
of months? Okay.
I
And
mean,
you're
the
probably
books have been on there for longer,
okay.
but the free availability of the books has
Right.
been much less. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting how podcasters have just taken it everywhere they are. They never get paid for their content. But
I
again,
don't
they
think that's true. Like
well,
who? Like who's not getting paid?
anybody that has their podcast on Spotify
Well,
that's not a Spotify right,
podcasters.
right, that's not a Spotify
That's
original.
100% true. Yeah, that
They get screwed in the end, though, again, we don't have a
yeah,
collective
that's
lawyer
like a
scheme.
blogger.
I know,
A
it is.
podcast is an audio blog, and
Exactly.
bloggers
It
aren't
is.
getting paid where that gets shown either, unless you put it behind a paywall.
Yeah.
And you could do the exact same thing with your podcast. You could put
Yeah.
that behind a paywall.
You
But
can.
if you're out there to build an audience and
Mhm.
convert them to buy some other services that you're doing, if you're using it as a sales call,
Yeah.
um, that's the idea. But these authors, the Stephen Kings
Mm.
and George R. R. Martins, they have an audience. You got to pay them.
Right, and they're represented well, and I guess
Yeah.
that's my point, that we don't really have great representation in this world yet. I don't know anything. I don't have any tea leaves to read. We're not unionized, quote unquote, to make this work. But again, it comes back to that. Okay, if you do want to monetize what you're creating here, you got to go a different direction. And podcasting was never designed as an advertising medium anyway. It's very existence of anonymity makes it a poor advertising medium. Any analytics that you get with your
Mm,
podcast, you don't know who's listening. For the most part, you don't know how long they've listened to unless they listen to a specific player like Apple, or they use the player embed code that's given to you on your hosting platform, then you can judge that. But that's not holistic. Everything is anonymized.
Yeah, but that's the entire advertising industry. That was how the advertising industry was built.
Yeah,
Radio Original radio broadcasters couldn't tell you anything about their audience. They can
it could.
barely tell you anything about it now. TV, they can tell you anything about it. Newspapers, they can tell you anything about it. So I don't I don't know. I think that podcasting is built for advertising to the
Oh,
same
really?
level.
Okay. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, if
Yeah.
you're
For
gonna get paid for it, there's different strategies, right?
yeah.
So,
Well,
why are you building it? What do you want out of it is the first thing you should
r-
ask before you start any
correct.
project.
Correct. And what I'm meaning is true marketing, know who is listening and that sort of thing. Obviously, that's valuable information, but you're right. Radio stations don't really know, other than research they do,
Or the fake or the fake stats. They
the fake stats, yeah, or you put qualitative in any fashion that you want to
yeah,
make it look good. Oh, we played those games, both you and I have. You never show something that you don't look good in.
yeah.
So
I mean, and look at
yeah,
the resurgence of programmatic now
yeah,
because of the problem with, the third party data.
hmm
A lot of things programmatic. Now, they can still give you general terms about how many people are listening, but in the early days of newspapers and radio and TV, that was all made up. That was
yeah,
estimates of a guess. They didn't know any of that.
yeah,
It's gotten better, but it's
hmm
the same thing with a podcast. I mean, at least you can point to a podcast or your blog and say, I got X amount of
yeah,
people that came to it.
hmm
And if you can survey your audience, you can find out some general information about, hey, you're listening to my podcast. What kind of books do you read? Oh, well, 80% of the people who replied to my survey like mystery books.
hmm
So that's great. You brought
yeah,
up an excellent example of you wondered about the data Spotify was getting about its listeners being able to pair the type of music one of their members listen to with the types of books they listen to. I thought that was kind of interesting.
yeah. I would be intrigued to know. Okay, if you're a mystery listener, what type of music do you like? Yeah,
Yeah,
what's the DNA in that? Overall, I think that would be really interesting. It
I want to
really
see
would
that
be.
on next year's Spotify Wrapped report. Like,
Yeah.
you listen to the Beastie Boys and you love uh the Flowers in the Attics novel. Like, I want this bizarre disparity.
Oh, big time. Exactly, and then go off on, like, how in the world does this happen?
Yeah.
It's like, "Hey, we all have our feminine side." I mean,
You
whatever the case may, yeah.
you listen to Black Flag and other punk rock artists and enjoyed 40 hours of Nicholas Sparks novels.
Right, right, right. I it would be so fascinating to see that, and it's in the works. It's gotta be because they
Oh,
love
I hope so.
cross-pollinating. It's all there. Why wouldn't you connect
Yeah.
some dots?
I
Connect some
I
dots,
I
yeah.
will love seeing my friends post their Wrapped
Yeah.
with what kind
Well,
of books they
and
read.
then you start to see these authors do rock stadium tours because they
Yeah.
know that, um
Your
y
opening act is gonna be a reading.
exactly. Oh my gosh. That could be
Or
so
or you
fun.
could have bands open for the author tours. The author's going around to bookstores, and you're gonna
There
have
you
somebody
go.
from their yeah.
Yeah.
Uh,
Oh my
I don't know if you
gosh.
heard me clicking away on my keyboard over the audio or not, but I
Yeah.
did look up about authors getting paid for their audiobooks on
Okay.
Spotify.
Okay.
And the response was, according to authorsguild.org, Spotify negotiates different deals with each publisher, of
Okay.
course, and authors are paid based on either the percentage of a book. Let me try it again. Different deals with publishers and authors, and they're paid based on either the percentage of a book a user listens to or how many hours they listen to a book. So, according to
Hmm.
authorsguild.org, the payment's triggered when a user listens to about 10 to 20% of the book. However,
Hmm.
some authors will generally only get paid if a person listens to their entire book.
Ah.
That has a lot to do with the audiobook services or the author's deal with the publishers. According to goodereader.com, authors claim they're being deprived of their claim to royalty for the 15 hours of audiobook listening that users are entitled to each month. So maybe there's a top 15 hours that are part of the free paid. I don't know.
Mhm.
I would imagine that's going to change, because authors need to get paid. That's You're
Oh,
using their content. They
Yes.
get paid by writing the book and selling the book.
Mhm.
And if you're not going to pay them, then the authors ought to have that option to opt out,
Right.
just like the bands on Spotify do and
Mhm.
the artists on Spotify do for the music.
Right, right, and you bringing that scenario, a couple of scenarios up, how will this evolve on Spotify Premium?
Yeah.
So the 50, obviously, this is probably a lead in to try to get as many ears onto Spotify Premium. Then, the free 15 hours probably is not a sustainable
Oh, I
working.
think it should. I mean,
You
well,
think
the
that
others,
I don't know. I
the
I
others,
would.
keep in mind, not all the titles are available in your free 15 hours.
True, true.
So I found something interesting. One of the authors I like is John Acuff. He writes a lot of business stuff. He wrote a book called
Mhm,
Start. He wrote a book called Finish, and I like his stuff. Well, I already own his print books and sometimes the ebook, but I had not purchased the audiobook. So I wanted to see. He's got a book on goal setting. I think it's all you need is a goal or something. I'll feel bad if I get his title wrong, but he's got a new book out on goal setting for the new year.
mhm,
So I was going to go in and listen to that, and I'm looking at the other titles that are available from him, and some of his books are available, but not all of his books are available. So what a great way to sample an artist,
mhm.
sample an author, and then go back and listen and pay for the privilege of listening to something else. And I'm kind of surprised that some artists, musicians aren't set up the same way. Like
Yeah.
you can listen to Taylor Swift's greatest hits, but if you want to listen to all of her music, you have to buy the album.
Mhm. Yeah. Did you see a rhyme or reason in to what books were available or not? Were they
Nah, because it was interesting.
okay,
One of them, I was surprised that a relatively new release, I think it was the goal setting book,
okay.
was available, even though it was a new release. But he has a book called Start and Finish. There's a book called Start and another book called Finish.
Mhm.
And I think Start was available, but Finish wasn't.
Hmm.
So it was interesting that this older book was, the newer book was, but the book in the middle was not. But I think that's following a similar theory to when Amazon Kindle has specials on books.
Okay.
So there's a series of books by an author that you like, and you get an email from Amazon saying, "Oh, book 5 in the series is on sale for $1.99." Okay, well, book 1 through 4 is still full price. So, are you gonna buy the middle of the series for the discount and not start with the first book?
Right.
That's a weird thing for me.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Well, time will tell. I think it makes sense for them to be in this space. It
I
it
do too.
just it just depends on how they cultivate it over time.
I think
If
they're
it
off to a great start, though.
I
I'm
think so too.
encouraged by making that
Yeah,
available to
yeah.
already paying users.
Yeah. So I saw this posted by Seth Godin, who we both love. It was on LinkedIn, and it's eight marketing maxims that pretty much are truisms that you should follow religiously. I guess you could say that, or they always seem to be the truth that they come to fruition. And I thought it would be a nice way to end our year talking about them in regards to how you market yourself, your podcast, your business, because most of these things do hold with however you look at what you're trying to market. Let's put it that
Yeah,
way.
no matter the category. I mean, this is
Yeah.
just real life. You can apply these or change a word
Hmm.
here and there and apply it to
Yeah.
anything you got going on with your life, whether it's marketing, whether it's podcast programming, building an
Hmm.
audience on any platform, or just your life. So Seth always has great stuff. When you shared this article, it seemed
Yeah.
a great way to end the year on it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Why don't you roll down all 8 of them and let's
Yeah.
go back and chop
Yeah.
them up?
Yeah. So number one, trust is worth more than attention. Number two, helping people get to where they seek to go is more effective than hustling people to persuade them to go where you're going. That's a lot to think about. That's a nice one to break down. We will. Number three, choose your customers, choose your future. Four, tell 10 people. If they don't tell the others, make a better product. That hits so home run for podcasters. Five, creating the conditions for the word to spread is the job of the marketer. Six, customer service is free. Seven, quote, you'll pay a lot, but you'll get more than you paid for, unquote, is a useful motto. And number eight, act like people are watching. They are. I
Yeah.
love these. I
Yeah, these are all
love
great.
these.
Yeah.
So number 1, trust is worth more than attention. Yeah.
I mean, look, before we dive too far,
Sorry.
let's
Go ahead.
start with anybody who may or may not be Seth Godin fans.
Yeah.
Seth rarely shares anything that is 100% original, but he puts excellent spins on things that are already
Mhm.
out there.
Yeah.
So if you heard Brett read those 8 and went, "Nah, I heard that before. That's not
Mhm.
for me." He's just taking and putting another spin on it. And
Mhm.
just because you heard it somewhere else doesn't make it any less true. So
Right.
don't take the attitude of, "Oh, I already knew that or I already heard that before." Ask yourself, as my friend Jeffrey Gitomer says, ask yourself, how good are you at it? So
Mhm.
keep that in mind while you're reading through it. Not,
Right.
I already know that. Ask yourself how good you are at it.
Mhm.
So
Exactly,
yeah,
exactly.
your number one. I'm sorry, talked over you.
No.
Trust is worth more than attention. Yeah. How can
Yeah.
you get anybody's attention if nobody trusts you?
Exactly. Talk about a spinning gerbil wheel that you're just continually running to try to get people's attention, but that trust slows it down, and all of a sudden you're friends for life with trust. You are
Well,
friends for life with trust.
think about every ad for a car dealer you've ever seen. They're
Mhm.
really good at getting people's attention. They shout louder than anybody. They buy more ads than anybody. But how many of them do you look at and go, "Oh, I totally trust that guy.
Yeah,
I'm gonna go.
exactly.
I'm gonna send my grandma to him to buy her car." Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, exactly. 2, helping people to get where they seek to go is more effective than hustling people to persuade them to go where you're going. Yeah.
yeah. I actually just read an article that it talked about this concept in different words, and it was um, basically every company out there has come up with their buyer persona and their new focus on quality, and they're going to keep pitching you on their internal programs, trying to get consumers to buy a car based on their 12-point inspection checklist. When why don't you help the person buy a car that works at a good price? Not to
Mhm.
dwell on car dealers this much,
Yeah,
but
no.
just the first example that came to mind. Help your audience, help your customers get what they need, rather
Understand their
than just going, "We need to sell more of package C."
right. Understand their pain point and address it and fix it.
Solve their
That
problems.
solve their problems. Yeah. Number 3, choose your customers, choose your future. Yeah, understand
So
who you're
good.
marketing to, who understand the content that you're creating. Who's the listener? Who's the reader?
Who's the
That
listener? Who's the leader?
yeah,
Who's the reader? Who's the buyer?
right.
If you choose your wrong customer, you're not gonna get what you want out of the project.
Mhm. Right,
If you're
right,
choosing an audience that has no interest in the content you're producing, they're not gonna listen to you.
right, right. And that leads into number 4, tell 10 people. If they don't tell the others, make a better product.
Yeah.
I
Produce a better show, record a
yeah,
better episode. Yeah.
it really doesn't get much simpler than that. If you think about it, you break it down, if those 10 people, you cannot activate those 10 people to tell other people about what you just told them you're doing or creating or selling, change it.
Or, you jump back to 3, which did you choose the wrong customer?
Yeah,
Did you choose the wrong listener?
right, right, exactly. Number 5, creating the conditions for the word to spread is the job of the marketer.
How do you angle that? How do you, define that in your head? Because I have a specific
Creating
idea in
conditions for
mind.
the word to spread. Well, it actually kind of goes back to our very first, for me, our first story of the platform, the conditions. What what are you creating that is appealing and will keep your listeners, your readers, your buyers there for you, and create it well. But it's all part of marketing. You have to
I'll
understand.
give you my
I
take on this
think.
because
I
I'm
think.
actually using you as my example.
Okay.
So, you have assembled this circle of experts
Yeah.
that you do this podcast for, and you're obviously driving the bus on this project. You're scheduling the recording sessions, you're
Mhm.
producing them, you're publishing them. But every time you send an episode out, you email the team, you email the circle and say, "Hey, here are the links to the episode.
Mhm.
Here are the graphics you can use in your post. Here's a cut and paste social post. Here's the link, here's the page to send them to." You're creating the conditions for us to help spread the word about it. So if you're the
Okay.
host of a podcast, if you're producing a podcast,
Mhm.
and you want those 10 people in the tip before this to go out and tell other people, how easy are you making it for them to tell other people?
There you
Do
go.
you have a good domain name that people can remember to share? Do you have a one click button that they can press to share this in their social media?
Mhm.
You're enabling them. Make it easy for them to tell a friend. Make it easy for them to share a podcast. I mentioned my podcast player, Pocket Cast. When I'm listening to an episode, and Brett, I'm sure, has gotten some referrals, and I'm listening to something, I can click on a button inside that player and I can either send him a link to the entire episode,
Mhm.
a link to the podcast itself, or I can send him a link to the exact moment in the podcast that I'm listening to, the timestamp spot. That is creating ideal conditions for me as a user to share that with other people that I think would be interested in it. So that's what I get out of that
That's a
maxim.
much better explanation of it. Yeah. Personally, number 5 was the hardest to get my head wrapped around, but you explained that very, very well. That because there's that, it's a mixture of a lot of words there. There's like marketer, conditions, word spread, that
Well,
sort
I
of
mean,
thing. It's a
if
good
other
way. No,
people
I
have a
love
different
it.
take on
It's
it,
perfect.
share it. Hey, audience,
Yeah.
send us an email. Go
Mhm.
go to the website and send us an email. Leave a
Mhm.
comment in a post. Let us
Yeah.
know how it affects you. How would you
Yeah.
put that maxim into effect?
Exactly.
The next
Yeah.
one I think is awesome. I love this one.
Yeah.
Customer service is free.
Yeah.
Here are a couple other truisms to go with
Mhm.
that maxim.
Yeah.
Bad customer service is free. Good customer service is free. There's an awful lot of people out there handing out bad customer service
Yeah.
because it's free,
Yeah.
and they forget that good customer service is free too.
Mhm. Exactly. Exactly. Number
I'm a huge fan of bar rescue,
Mhm.
and the guy goes in to rescue these bars that are doing poorly. And every single episode, I've watched 5 seasons so far. Every single episode, he walks into the bar and it's disgusting. They didn't clean the kitchen, they didn't clean the bar. It's gross. And you hear them tell the sob story about how they're so deep in debt, times have been hard, and it can't get people to work. And he goes, "Yeah, man, I'm with you. That yeah, my sympathy, but cleaning your kitchen doesn't cost you anything. Why is it a mess? You don't have any business. You don't have any customers keeping you busy. Why isn't your kitchen clean?" And
Right.
you're like, how are you going to argue against that?
You
So
don't.
customer service is free. It
Right.
doesn't matter if you have one customer or 1,000 customers, treat them right. And if you're
Yeah.
not treating them right, there's nothing anybody can do to help you.
Right. Exactly. Number 7, you'll pay a lot, but you'll get more than you paid for is a useful motto. That I have to write and put on my computer screen everywhere I look because we
Because your
get beat.
prices are too high. Because your
No,
prices are too high. No, that's
we
the
get
your
well, we
prices
get
are
beat.
too high.
Yeah, we get beaten up all the time.
Yeah,
Exactly. And it's
you
like,
guys cost too
no,
much.
no,
I'd get it cheaper someplace else.
then go do it. I just,
No, no, a better
yeah,
response though is we are asking you to
yeah.
invest. It tells us you're serious about you. It puts a value on my time as an expert. I can only work with so many clients.
Mhm.
I need to know you're in it too. Yes, I am asking you to pay more because you can get everything cheaper everywhere else. You can go to a 99-cent store and still find it for free on the curb someplace. You can always get it something free.
Mhm.
Yes, I'm asking you to pay a little more, but you're going to get more than what you paid for. And
Mhm.
that last part I think is missing from a lot of people's response to the this costs too much, you cost too much, you're too
Yeah.
expensive line.
Yes, I think you're right. It balances that whole saying out, and you're meeting them where they are saying, "Yeah, I agree,
Yes, it is. We do
but
charge a lot
you're right, but we get results, and you get more of them what you pay for." Exactly. And finally, 8, act like people are watching. They are. They are. I think that is extremely important, especially if you're starting to take your now that we're opening up even more and more to be able to be in front of people, networking, just representing yourself as a business, as a podcast, or whatever you're doing. you- uh, get used to that. You are who you are, and you represent what you do. The trust, all the previous
Yeah, but
seven, the previous 7 come into play for number 8.
well, I think the act like people are watching is a bigger statement. I mean, think about social media and
Mhm.
YouTube, and everybody's got a video camera in their pocket. And if you're misbehaving out in public, somebody's recording you.
Oh, they got
And
you.
if you don't think they are, you're crazy. I
Mhm.
because I know all of our listeners have watched a video somebody sent them about that woman in the Chipotle that threw her burrito in somebody's face, about the parents who are yanking their kids in the stores. It The people are cutting people off in traffic, taking people's parking spaces or shouting them down. They are watching, so behave yourself.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
at this time of season, Santa's watching too.
Exactly, exactly. Well, great. You know what? If a listener wants to get a hold of you, Don, to really flesh out, let's say that they want to talk more about these 8 maxims from Seth with you, because I think we really did a good job of talking about them. But at the same time, how can we utilize them for our business to brainstorm with what you do? How can they get a hold of you?
Well, the best place to reach me is at dontheideaguy.com, and that's a really great idea. If you are interested in talking about any one of these, I'd say you could do a focused brainstorm on, like, how do we choose the best customer to choose our best future? Yeah, schedule a brainstorm on dontheideaguy.com. We'll meet online over a cup of coffee and get you some solid ideas on how to get the right customers for the right results that you want to have for your business. So
Right.
visit me at dontheideaguy.com, and I'm on all the socials too.
Right. Yeah. If you want to talk about podcasting and what it can do for your business in the next 12 months, give me a holler, whether you're B2B or B2C. We create a content marketing strategy that's going to work for you. We're going to include a lot of those maxims that Seth just talked about as well, too. It's universal with everything you do. And I think it's important to look at that with what you do with any content creation. So you can contact Circle 270 Media at circle270media.com. Got a calendar there to book some time. Let's talk. Let's get you going. Or let's take a look at what you're already creating and you want to do better with it. There's just pieces to it, or just something's not clicking with the podcast. Let's do a review of it. That's a great way to start. It's not necessarily throwing out the baby with the bathwater. It could be just tweaking some things that are just not quite clicking with the podcast. And let's take get a second pair of ears or 3 pair of ears. We'll get Don involved with
Three,
reviewing your,
yeah, and Brett's right. It's B2B, B2C. Brett has all the letters. Brett has all the best letters. B2B, B2C, D2C,
Yep, exactly.
Elemental P, XYZ. He has them all.
Exactly, exactly. And with that note, until next time, we'll talk to you then, Don.
Bye.